things will go my way now.
Thank you. Well, my name is Henry Lai. I'm with bioengineering department. I'm going to give a talk on use of a compound called Артемизинин for cancer treatment, and also for possibly it can be used as an antibacterial or antifungal compound. We have been working with this compound for almost, I think, more than 10 years now with Dr. Singh, who's sitting right here. I guess the first paper we published was 1995, so 10 years now. And so why this compound is so interesting, let's see. So we are trying to use this compound for as a cancer chemotherapy and as an antibacterial. So the criteria of a good cancer or antibacterial treatment is that this should be effective against cancer cells or bacteria. Well, it's obvious. And one thing which is very important is that the compound should be relatively less harmful to normal cells. Because in chemotherapies, we see a lot of side effects, which is caused by the action of the drug on normal cells. If you have a drug that is not harmful to normal cells, you will see less side effect. If you meet patients who had undergone chemotherapy, side effects are a very, very big problem. Another thing is that it can be easy. It should be easy to administer. For example, if you can take it by mouth, the treatment can be used as an outpatient treatment instead of going in the hospital and get drips, IV, and things like that. And then another thing that's important is that the drug should not develop, should have a low tolerance, that after repeat administration, you should have the effect should last, and it should not go away with repeated treatment. The cell will not get habituated, adapted to the treatment. The last issue I think is important is that should be low cost. Most chemotherapy are very, very expensive. So people, for example, people in developing countries, they have no way of getting chemotherapy unless the drug is cheap enough to be affordable by people in third world country or developing country. Артемизинин somehow meet almost all of these criteria. So what we need is a toxin that's more harmful to cancer cell or bacteria than normal cells. And then another thing that we were doing is to try to deliver this compound selectively to cancer cell and bacteria. It makes it more selective in killing cancer cells than normal cells. That means there will be less side effect. Now, how this discovery of Артемизинин is a very interesting story. Well, we have time, so I have to tell you the story. The compound is isolated from a sweet wormwood, or called sweet anise. The name is Artemisia annula. It was discovered by the Chinese in the 1970s and has been used as an anti-malarial compound since the 70s. Right now, there are about 2 million people treated with this compound for malaria. So that's a very good record of using of this drug. It's been used for almost 30 years. And if you want, there's 2 articles in the Time magazine on this compound. The name Артемизинин comes from Artemis. This is the goddess of Greek goddess of hunting, or the Roman called Artemis Diana. And this is a twin sister of Apollo, if you know your Greek mythology. I'm going to talk about Trojan horse, so I will tell you more about Artemis. Now, there are 2 stories how Артемизинин was discovered. The first one is more romantic, the Indiana Jones story. So what's the first story? Oh, let me show you. This is the Artemisia annula. This is how it looked like. This is a field in the Sichuan province in China, the southwest part of China. The whole mountain, I was invited to this farm about 2 years ago. The whole mountain is Artemisia. It go from one province to another province. And they're harvesting from this type of Artemisia. Now, we have Artemisia in North America, in Canada, in eastern USA. But the Artemisia that we have in North America does not have Artemisinin. Even the Artemisia in China is only 0.4% Artemisinin. It's very, very low amount. So they have to harvest a lot and then extract from the Artemisia. Now, do not mix up with Artemisia absentia. That's another drug that people soak in gin and drink. This is a very popular drink in India for when the British colonized India. They soak Artemisia absinthe in gin and then drink. It has a psychedelic effect. We got a lot of people call and say, "Are you using the Artemisia absinthe?" No, it's not. It's Artemisia annua. Okay, then we'll go to the Changsha province in China. This is a small hill called Mawang. This is a small hill. And 1972, there was a farmer there digging on the field, and gas came out. And then they said, "What's under this, under here?" So they told the army people came in and start digging. They found a tomb, a family tomb from the markers of date. This is a 100 and 200 BC tomb. Now, how the tomb looks like is very big. This is a tomb. Look at how small the people are. Inside the tomb, they found 3 coffins. Husband and wife, the marquis and his wife, and the son. The son is about, when the son dies, about 32 years old. Actually, they have, in the coffin, there's a day. The person who buried the son put a small chip inside the coffin and marked down the day when the burial was done. So they know exactly when the son was buried. And this is one of the coffins. It's very well decorated, colorful coffin. And this is the wife. It's still preserved, and the skin is still elastic when they press on it. But what's interesting is that inside one of these coffins, they found a seal score. And the name of the seal score is called the Prescription for 52 Diseases. And it describes 283 medical treatments inside the seal score. It's very interesting. In the treatment includes surgery, removal of colon, things like that. It's very elaborate. This is, right now, is the oldest Chinese medical text existing. In one of the 52 treatments, the 52 disease is malaria. And this, well, of course, we cannot read it. This is what is described in this or this in the seal score is use of Artemisia for the treatment of malaria. And so this is one story of how Artemisinin was discovered later. It's a romantic story, includes archaeologies and things like that. But that's another story. Another story comes from the Vietnam War. Now this is, I think it's a more believable story. It was in the 60s. It was the starting of the Vietnam War. One time, the Ho Chi Minh, the leader of the North Vietnamese, called Mao Zedong, and there's a problem. We have malaria, and we cannot solve this problem because the soldiers sick. They got malaria. So Mao has issued an order to discover treatment for malaria. So the order is called 514, May 14 order. And so they asked around and asked people do you know anything about malaria? How do you treat it and things like that? And they come up with one long-lost book called the Suhao Emergency Prescription. This is a 4th century text. Now, in this text, there's a more elaborate description of treatment of malaria using Artemisia. It's very simple. This description is like this. You just take a bunch of Artemisia leaf, soak it in water overnight, and then drink the water. And this was used as a treatment for malaria in China, at least since the 4th century. So they try it. They must got hundreds of recipes, and then they try this one. Somehow they found it worked. They took the leaf, soak it, and then drink the water. So what's the ingredient inside this Artemisia that is effectively anti-malarial? So they start to isolate and come up with this compound, Artemisinin, or Qinghao Su. Qinghao is a Chinese name for Artemisia, and Su is the essential, that is the extract from Qinghao. What is important, this compound, what is the most important part of this compound is this called an endoperoxide bridge, which has 2 oxygen linked together across 2 carbon atoms. And then they further discover how this works. The whole thing was discovered within years. So this is actually a amazing scientific story. They found the compound, and then they also discover how it worked. And by the way, after the Vietnam War, there was the Chinese Cultural Revolution. If you remember that, everything was stopped except 2 A's, 2 types of research, atomic bomb and Artemisinin. So this continued in the 70s on the research. Now, how does this work? What happened is that this endoperoxide bridge over here is unstable. When an ion encounter this bonding, this oxygen, the bonding between the 2 oxygen, it breaks up. Now, when this bonding breaks up, this oxygen each one will have a lone electron, and what it is a free radical. So it forms free radical. Now, we all know that free radical can kill cells, can react with fats, DNA, protein, lipid, and can cause cell death. And that's why most of us are taking antioxidant supplements, vitamin C, vitamin E, etc. But this compound acts as a free radical to kill cells. Now, how does it kill malaria? This is another very interesting story. Malaria is a parasite. So basically, the mosquito inject the parasite into your body, and the parasite will go into red blood cells. And inside red blood cell, there are lots of hemoglobin. And they chew up the hemoglobin. That's what they eat. And so all they can do is that they digest the protein. The hemoglobin has 2 parts, a protein moiety and also a heme, which is not a protein, which is a hydrocarbon. They can digest the protein and break down the amino acids and use the amino acids for their own reproduction, etc. And they digest a lot. One parasite can produce 60,000 hemes, can digest 60,000 hemoglobin molecules within 1 minute. But there's a problem. They digest the protein, but not the heme. They have no enzyme to digest the heme. Now, heme has an iron atom. I don't know how many of you remember your old biochemistry. Heme is a porphyrin. It has an iron in the center. And this is toxic. What it is that this, again, related to free radical. This is a so-called Fenton reaction. In the mitochondria, when we do oxidative metabolism, we produce hydrogen peroxide. This hydrogen peroxide will encounter an ion and convert into hydroxy. This is a very potent free radical, and then can cause cell damage. So if the parasite allowed the heme to accumulate, they will form hydroxy free radical through this phantom reaction and kill the parasite. So now you know why the artemisinin kill the malaria parasite, because the iron in the heme reacts with the endoperoxide, the bridge, the two oxygen, and artemisinin is converting the free radical, and then it kill the parasite. That's how it works. Now, usually a parasite can, we'll just diverge a little bit. A parasite is protecting themselves by packing the heme in the polymer. They just pack them together by this one heme molecule, another heme molecule. They just form a covalent bond between the iron and one of the carbon in the second molecule. So they become a rosette stacked on each other. And then they also form, by hydrogen bonding, they have other allyl or the polymer. So in that case, they're protecting themselves, so only the one on the top and the bottom will react. Anything in between is become inactive. But that's how they how the malaria protect themselves from heme poisoning. Let me show you. These are red cells, red blood cells that look green, but they're red blood cells. And inside the red blood cell, this purple stain are parasite invasion in the red cells. Now, if you look into use an electron microscope and look into this is the red cell. Inside the red cell, this is the malaria, which is actually very big, the parasite. Inside the parasite, they have a food vacuole that digests the heme, and then they stack the heme together into big particles. These are so-called, if you look down a microscope, you can actually see these particles. They're called malaria particles. And one of the compound, chloroquine, that's used for malaria treatment actually disrupt this formation of this package. And that's how chloroquine kill malaria, because then if they cannot pack together, they will form the phantom reaction and kill the malaria. So, well, there's another story, is that this particle is also paramagnetic. You can put a magnetic field outside the malaria. This is another area we're doing research on. You can put a magnetic field outside and cause this particle to oxidate. And then you can damage the malaria and kill the malaria. So that's a different story. So, as a summary, the artemisinin reacts with iron to form free radical that kill cells. And that's so simple. Now, how does it kill cancer cells? It turns out that cancer cells have a very high amount of intracellular iron, much higher than normal cells. Why do they need this amount of iron? Because when a cancer cell divides very fast, they have to form DNA. They have to replicate the DNA. In order to replicate DNA, they need deoxyribose, and deoxyribose comes from ribose. The enzyme that converts ribose into deoxyribose require iron as a cofactor. So during the G1 phase and the S phase, the cells start to divide. They have to form DNA. During that time, they express a very high amount of so-called transferrin receptors on the cell surface. This transferrin receptor pick up transferrin, which is an iron-carrying compound in the plasma, and then they pump into the cell. And when you look at for example, when you look at a leukemia, human leukemia cell versus a normal white blood cell, the leukemia cell pick up 1,000 times more iron than a normal cell. So inside the cancer cell, there is a lot of iron inside. Now, then you ask the question, are they more susceptible to the cytotoxic effect of artemisinin. So we test this artemisinin on cancer cells. This was the first experiment we did in 1994. We took two types of cells, human leukemia cells, they are called MO4 cells, and normal lymphocyte, human lymphocyte. These are Dr. Singh's lymphocyte, actually. Should be very normal. So we, on the upper graph, I'm not going to go into detail. These are the cell counts over time, 8 hours, and the cell counts from beginning, 100%. Now, if we put holotransferrin, which is the iron, as I said, that transport iron into cells, and then we incubate the cell with artemisinin, you can kill, this is a cancer cell, you can kill almost 100% of them within 8 hours. Now the lower graph is the normal cells, you kill about 50% at this concentration of 200 micromolar. Now you can do a dose response, different doses, and then what's left at 8 hours. And from there you can calculate the LD50, that means the dosage that you kill 50% of the cell. That's how you compare the effectiveness of a toxicity of a compound. What we found is that the artemisinin is approximately 100 times more potent in killing leukemia cells than normal cells. So this is a very good therapeutic index. 100 times, you need 100-fold more artemisinin to kill normal cells than cancer cells. Now this is the experiment on human leukemia cells. We also did another experiment on human breast cancer cells and normal breast cells. We found the same thing. At this time, it's even better. The human breast cancer cell die completely after 16 hours. Nothing happened almost. Very, very small change in the normal breast cells. So this activity is even higher in breast cancer cells. So, and then after our experiment, there were several experiments done on the potency of artemisinin on different types of cancer cells. Actually, there was an experiment done over Fred Hutch in the, I think it's 2000 or 2001. They published a paper. They tested about 15 types of cancer cells, human cancer cells, and they found that it's very effective. So artemisinin is very effective against cancer cells. It's effective at low dose. The dose that kills 50% is 2 micromolar for leukemia cells. There's little side effect. I will tell you later about this, is what happened to animals. It can be taken orally, and it's a good side, and it's inexpensive. In the US, you can buy a 100 milligram capsule for about 75 cents, but you can also buy the same thing in China for about 10 cents. That's enough dose for at least in rats. 100 milligram, equivalent about 1 to 2 milligram per kilogram per day is effective in animal for treatment of cancer. We also done an experiment on cancer prevention. So you know that the cancer you have a cancer cell, the cancer cell starts to divide and become a tumor. Can you catch the certain cancer cell and kill the cancer cell before it becomes a big tumor? So we did that. In this experiment, we induced cancer in animals, breast cancer in animals, in rats. And then we feed the animal, we put some artemisinin in the food, 0.04%. This is a very low amount. And they start to eat. And then we just measure how many animals develop breast cancer. This is the animal, that's the control animal. Almost all of them develop cancer within 40 weeks. And the control pick up slowly, and only 50% of the animal develop cancer. And when you look at this animal developed multiple breast cancer, and the controls the white bar, the open bar, and the field bar, the artemisinin-fed animal. And number of tumor in the animal, there's less multiple tumor in the animal eating artemisinin. And also the size, they're smaller. The size of the tumor, the total volume of the tumor is also smaller when you feed the animal with artemisinin. So I think it's quite promising. And we also have animals that we feed them this 0.04%. It's about 8 milligram per kilogram. You can calculate that. For 40 weeks, we have not seen any side effects in the animals. So as I said, the side effect is very, very minimal. And of course, as I said, 2 million people have used artemisinin as an anti-malarial. And nobody so far have reported any side effect. But of course, when you treat malaria, it only takes about 5 days. And in this case, you have to use artemisinin for a very long period of time. Okay, in addition to that, we are making something called Trojan horse. Now, the other criteria that I mentioned is that we try to deliver this compound selectively to cancer cells. So this is what we call a Trojan horse. What we did is that we tagged the artemisinin to 2 compounds, transferrin and lactoferrin. Now, transferrin, as I said, is the compound that carry iron into the cells. So when a cell sees that it looks like something is not harmful, they will take it in. But if you tag the artemisinin with the transferrin, it will go into the cell at the same time with the transferrin. Now, once the transferrin gets into the cell, it will release the iron. The iron will immediately react with the artemisinin and kill the cell. Lactoferrin is another form of iron-carrying protein in our body, and it may be useful for treatment of bacterial infection. And this is just what I said. The molecule transport into cells by receptor called the transferrin receptor. So the artemisinin tag transferrin will be first is picked up more by cancer cell because cancer cell has more transferrin receptor. And second, you get this artemisinin also at the same time transport into the cell and will trigger this free radical formation and kill the cells. So this is basically the same thing, the Trojan horse technique. So we have the transferrin molecule has 2 parts, a protein part and a glycosylated part. We tag the artemisinin on the sugar section of the molecule because the protein section is involved in receptor binding. We can tag about the average number of artemisinin we can tag to 1 transferrin is about 5, average of 5. So again, we make this compound at the chemistry department with Dr. Sasaki, and then we try this compound again on the human leukemia cells and also on the normal lymphocyte. This is a dose response, the log dose in micromolar versus the response. Now again, you can analyze and look for the so-called LD50. And then we compare artemisinin with this tag Trojan horse. Now artemisinin to kill MO4 cell, the leukemia cell, is about 2 micromolar, 1.6 micromolar. Lymphocyte is 56.4. You get a ratio of 36. So, but when you tag the compound to artemisinin to transferrin, the ratio will become 34,000. So that's a tremendous increase in selectivity after you tag the compound. So this compound would be a very good candidate for cancer treatment. One of the drawbacks of using artemisinin is that the half-life artemisinin is very, very short. And and then when you take artemisinin, it would disappear very fast within from the body. But this compound, since it's a Trojan horse, the transferrin has a half-life about 3 weeks, and it can last in the body much longer than artemisinin. Now, so I switch gear a little bit on how bacteria pick up iron. It's very interesting. Bacteria use the host transferrin, the host lactoferrin, and then they also use a type of compound called siderophores. I'm not going to talk about this, but let's talk about transferrin and lactoferrin. When you look at this, is kind of a table of different bacteria and how they get iron from the host. They have receptor to pick up transferrin or lactoferrin. These are very nasty bacteria. For example, the bacteria that cause meningitis, gonorrhea, and pneumonia. And there's another type bacteria, this Helicobacter pylori, that cause gastric ulcer, use lactoferrin. So they have selective mechanism to pick up human lactoferrin. So this is the same principle as the Trojan horse criteria, that they will see the lactoferrin, human lactoferrin or human transferrin as a normal compound. They will pick up for iron. So if you tag the artemisinin to the lactoferrin or transferrin, can you kill the bacteria? Now, we actually did an experiment on TB, Mycobacterium tuberculosis. This is the bacteria that cause TB. And right now, this is there's some problem now because of the drug resistance, development of TB bacteria to drugs, and it's very difficult to treat. And we tested the compound on this bacteria, and then we compare with this normal treatment, isoniazid, and we found that the artemisinin tag transferrin is about the same potency as the isoniazid. Now, right now we have, in addition to the compound that I mentioned, the transferrin and the lactoferrin tag with artemisinin, we have 5 more Trojan horses. And I cannot talk about them because we are still applying for patent. And these Trojan horse compounds are very easy to synthesize chemically, and material available from natural sources. And also there are recombinant techniques that you can make transferrin and lactoferrin. It's become cheaper and cheaper to get the compound. And the organisms are, this is a Trojan horse, so the organisms are not likely to develop resistance. And because if they develop resistance, they will die. That's part of the physiological function to pick up iron. And another thing I think is interesting is that the compound is a protein tagged with artemisinin. So you ask how you could administer, you have to give IV. But actually, the compound can be put in the aerosol, and then you can breathe in. You can just spray into your nose, and then it will go into your circulation. Oh, I think that's it. Stop talking so fast. Well, you can ask questions. Well, since we have so much time, the relation of Artemis with the Trojan horse is that if you, anyone watch there's a movie called Trojan Horse, right, or something like that, Trojan War. Remember the Agamemnon, the commander, the Greek was waiting for wind to go to Troy. There's no wind for some reason because the Agamemnon has offended a god or goddess. So he took his daughter up to the mountain. The goddess called Iphigenia, up to the mountain and sacrifice to God for wind. And the story, what the story said, suddenly the wind and everything, the goddess came down, Artemis came down and grabbed his daughter away. So that's the relation of Artemisia with the Trojan War. And well, after that, the wind came and then they sailed to Troy. So, is there any questions? Okay.
So, how do cancer cells protect themselves from so much iron if they're sequestering so much iron for dividing?
They use it up right away. Yeah, once it pump in, it's picked up by because it has to divide, and the enzyme uses iron as a cofactor. So there will be a lot of enzyme waiting to grab the iron from what is coming in. So once it will be protected, it will be chelated once it goes into the enzyme. Now, then that's another interesting question, is that why don't we kill the cell? We also have cells that are dividing very fast, hair cells, colon cells that are dividing very fast. And apparently we don't kill the cells. We don't have an answer to that because when you look at the breast cancer data that I showed earlier, they are all done at the log phase. They're all dividing very fast, at the same, almost at the same rate. The cancer cell and the breast cell are dividing at the same. But somehow we kill the cancer cell, but not the normal breast cells. We don't know. We don't have an answer. But Dr. Singh's hypothesis is that cancer cell has a very loose control of iron. They cannot grab. They cannot hold it very well, and then they let it react with the artemisinin. Because when we see, you will think that, well, since the hair cells are dividing so fast, you may see hair loss and things like that. So far, we treated our animal for 40 weeks, and there's still a lot of hair.
What is the status for a human trial?
We can find money. I think the artemisinin, I think it's ready for a human trial because we know quite a lot of the pharmacokinetics, the dynamics. We know a lot, and then there are a lot of patients actually have taken artemisinin. But I think right now the money, I think we need a lot of money to get a trial going. So.
Are there people who are interested?
Yes, actually I was approached by some people at Fred Hutch, but still we need to find some money to get the thing going. Now the tech compound will take a longer time because we are still we are starting some animal experiment right now to test the effect on animals.
I understand there's another compound. I think it's from the sap of the African yew.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, how does that compare to the effectiveness of this compound?
I don't know. I don't know how it... no, I don't know. But one thing that's interesting of this compound is that we know the mechanism. Because there's also another study that showed that if you chelate the iron, it cannot work at all. So that the action of artemisinin is very well established. You have a question?
I was wondering if artemisinin crosses the blood-brain barrier, and if you inhale it, does it get into the brain?
Yes. No, artemisinin you don't need to inhale; just swallow it.
Does that cross? That gets into the brain.
Oh yeah, artemisinin is very fat soluble, but there is another compound that's used. Artemisinin is no longer used. The parent compound is no longer used as anti-malarial. The compound which is used as anti-malarial is called artemether. They attach a methyl group on the artemisinin molecule to make it more hydrophobic. So artemether can cause the blood-brain barrier very fast. We have sent in a proposal. Yeah, we will take a look at it, and but there are people who are actually taking artemisinin, and it seems that brain cancer is very responsive to artemisinin treatment. Now the other compound, just following up your question, the transferrin, tag transferrin compound, does it go into the blood-brain barrier? Yes, it does. Because the blood-brain barrier has receptor on the surface to pump artemisinin into the brain. The brain uses a lot of iron. For some reason, nobody knows why. You have a question?
Yeah, so in your graphic treatment, it looked like for prevention there was a delay in onset and then it ramped up to 50%.
Yeah.
I guess you haven't gone out far enough. Will that level off, or will that eventually reach 100%?
We stop at 40 weeks. So, but why they still develop cancer, I really don't know. Yeah. Any more? Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
a river